Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Mike Aim Show, where we are going to be talking about one of the most annoying things about recruitment, which is reducing candidate blowouts, those pesky county offers that seem to make our candidates stay where they are. And we are joined by a special guest, which I believe, Mike, you are going to be introducing for us.
Let me just see what he's written about himself. Fabulous Cornishman with Indian Cornishman. Is that what you?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cornish, Indian, quite
Marvelous at
unique.
everything. I can't spell spectacular very effectively. I can't say that really. No, Leader Souza is one of our clients, but he is an outstanding, very, very professional. I'm not just saying that, which is why he's on the show. Very professional search consultant, and he runs a very, very good business, and they don't get many blowouts. In fact, you've had two in the existence of your business, which is what, 4.5, 5 years or something. So obviously, you know what you're talking about. And today you're going to share some of those tips with us, I hope, on the show. So welcome.
Thank you.
Right. So to begin with, Lee, I think a good place to start is maybe let's discuss why we think counteroffers actually happen and why they are such a bane to our existence. So what kind of things do you think are the cause of this?
I think there's two main issues, and I think I think recruiters that come across as being too focused on the fee puts candidates off, and it doesn't build a trust. And so if your candidate doesn't feel able to be open and honest with you, then you're not going to find out stuff that perhaps you should. So, I think good people make good recruiters. You need to make sure that you're thinking of their best interests. And then secondly, I think it's just a complete lack of qualification and not asking enough questions to seek the truth.
Can I just go back to the first of those? We'll unpack those separately because there's some interesting stuff in there. You said before we went live, you said a couple of things. You said recruiters live on hope, which, having been a recruiter for 34 years, we're in the industry for that long, 100%. This candidate is going to go in and I'm going to get the fee and the client's going to love me and everything's going to be great. And I think allied to that is that a lot of people see recruitment as an inclusive activity. Let's include as many candidates as we can, push them to the client, and that'll be hunky-dory. Whereas you said that you really see the recruitment process as an exclusive process. Get rid of as many people as you can, unless they're absolutely bang on. Get them out, because what's left is more likely to get the job and then accept it and keep it and not be subjective to counteroffers. And I thought that was very telling, actually, when you talked about that.
I think recruiters spend too much time on candidates that are never, ever going to accept a job in a million years, and they need to be asking better questions to understand whether they would accept a job or not. How interested are they in your client's role? What is the likelihood that they will leave their company? Actually asking them, the very first thing you should be asking them is, good candidates get counter-offered all the time. What would you do if you were counter-offered? Well, I'd probably stay where I am. Okay, well, good luck. I'm going to go speak to the next candidate.
That's what I mean. You see it as an exclusive, exclude people. Not, no, you'll be fine. Let me put you forward, and I'm sure you'll when you see the job, you'll absolutely love it. It's like, that's not going to end well, is it really? Ultimately,
No,
because the candidate has been good enough to be honest with you. Oh no, if they pay me another 10 grand, I'm staying. Okay, well, you're right then.
Wish you all the best.
There's a very good chance that's going to happen. So bye. And I think that's very true. It's interesting as well what you were saying about the red flags, because they're there, aren't they, if you look for them?
Yeah, and there's so many different things that can cause a placement not to happen. And I think there's, a few key ones. So I think candidates that are very money motivated accept counter-offers. And in my experience, the best candidates are genuinely interested in the role more so than the package. And obviously the package is an important element, but those candidates that are just like, what's the money? What's the package? Money, 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 are the ones that will accept a counter offer, and they've probably got other interviews as well. And I think the other thing is, if candidates don't seem genuinely excited and enthusiastic about your role, that probably tells you something. But again, I think recruiters get too hung up on, I've got a great candidate, their CV is brilliant, I'm going to put them forward. But if
Do
they're
you think
great, but
then
they're
it's
not going to
more to
accept,
do
what's the
with
point?
the way they're judging them? Do you think it's more to do with, well, have they got the skills that this role demands? Yes, they have, ticking that box. Are they a good cultural fit? Yeah, good, tick in that box. Well, they should take the job. Whereas there's that third criteria, which you've been talking a lot about, and I'm going to expand about an awful lot during the rest of the show, is yeah, they've got the technical skills, okay, good cultural fit, sounds okay, but actually, how committed are they to this role? How committed are they to want to move from where they are to now, not just get out of where they are now, but move to this new place because they want to be there? Do you think they're missing that third set of questions to really convince themselves?
You have to understand their drivers and motivators to know what will tempt them away. And that could be career progression. It could be that they're a project director that are working on small projects and they want to work on big, massive projects. Whatever it is, there has to be something that means there's something there that would tempt them away. And if they have no drivers or motivators, they're perfectly happy, they will not make a move. If there's nothing really that will make me move. I'm really happy where I am. Then you can go, okay, well, I was going to tell you about this role, but from what you're telling me, there's nothing that you can, that will tempt you away. Is that the case? It's that sense checking. It's getting under the skin of what motivates them, what drives them, and
Oh
does
yeah,
your role in the company meet that criteria?
yeah, because I know lots of people as well who have a bad day at work or an argument with their boss and then just start applying for jobs, and then 12 hours later they'll have cooled down and be like, nah, I don't really need it. So figuring out that earlier on the stage saves you a lot of heartache. Actually, I'm intrigued. If anybody's watching, can you let us know what's your favorite reason that a candidate accepted a counteroffer? Can you let us know that in the comments? Because there's bound to be some good ones.
Yeah, your favourite. I'd particularly like anything which was a similar to the dog ate my homework. I couldn't put it in because the dog ate it from school. Anything of that? Really? Is that the reason? Any of those would be fabulous, actually.
But if
I've
you
got
have a
one.
great relationship with candidates, they won't lie to you in general. Some still will, but if they trust you, they will be open and honest with you. And you should tell candidates that I want to do the right thing by you. And if anything changes, I just appreciate that you let me know, because things change, things happen.
Okay, fantastic. So, on that note, we spoke before and we went through and we found kind of 6 things that recruiters can do which will decrease the chances of their candidates accepting counteroffers. So, Lee, can we go through that now? And the first one is all about searching for the truth, is I believe what you refer to it as.
Was that a bullet point all by itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, so is this before the rating scale or linked to it or separate? I think
This is
it's yeah, so it links to that trust bit that you will not get the truth if you haven't got trust. And it's understanding what motivates them and drives them. I'm not really answering your kind of question here, but you need to get to the truth of what motivates them and why they're interested in the role. Because
The rating scale that you talked about, I mean, I was really interested in that because I believe you can use a scale in lots of situations to get somebody to really think deeply about what their answer is. So typically you would say, well, okay, to a client or prospective client, well, okay, give me a score from 1 to 10. 1, I'll never do business here. To 10, I'm just about to sign you up as a supplier. What number are we at? And almost always they're very truthful with that number. It's a weird thing. Whereas if you just ask, well, how likely are we to get a piece of work? You'll get a mushy answer back. Well, yeah, you probably get something. No, it's a 5. Oh, okay. Well, all right then. So I was hoping for a 10, but and you use the similar thing with candidates, don't you?
yeah, 100%, and we use it regularly through the process. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being I join our client's opportunity tomorrow, where would you put your interest level on a scale of 1 to 10? And so you take the answer. Let's say it's 6, and you might think, well, actually, say this to them, 6 seems quite low. I was hoping for a 10. Why is it not higher? And they might go, well, actually, 6 quite high for me. What would make it higher is to actually go and meet the hiring manager, because the relationship with me and my manager is very, very important. They then meet the hiring manager. They've had the interview. You then do an interview debrief. So now that you've met the hiring manager, where would you put your interest levels on a scale of 1 to 10? Oh,
4.
it's an 8 now. Well, yeah, and so yeah, it's a 4. Okay, so it's dropped. So why has it decreased? And it might be actually that they've made a wrong assumption about the role, and it's all about asking questions. So they might have made a wrong assumption. So we share the candidate's feedback with the client, and the client, well, no, that's not what I meant in terms of the role. I meant this, and then you can actually bring the candidate back again, and it might go back up to 8. It's all about asking lots and lots of probing questions to understand
But again,
exactly.
I'll reiterate, because what you said right at the very beginning, and I think it was really connected with me. You're asking these questions to make sure that they're right, not just to get them through the door. I mean, that's the difference, isn't it? You really want to, if you're not quite right, I'm excluding you from this process. I'm sure you would never say that, but that's your sentiment. Whereas a lot of recruiters, particularly those under the tyranny of the targets, are like, well, I'll stick you forward because I might get a deal and I need that deal because I've got my targets to hit. So it's a completely different mentality. And if there are any recruitment company owners out there, the way in which you incentivize and manage, reward and punish people will also have a direct result on how they treat this. If they have to get those targets, then they'll do what they can to put the numbers forward. Because what a blowout's a blowout, I don't really care about that, but they might work out, and therefore I might get that money that I need by the end of the month. You don't do that. That's not the way your business is organized at all, is it?
No, not at all, because you're trying to remove things going wrong. I want to know if there's a problem as soon as possible, because I don't want to get to the end of the process and then the candidate accepts the counteroffer. It just looks terrible on me and everyone, and I would tell the client if I think a candidate is at risk, because they appreciate that. And I think the other thing to say, Mike and Kirsty, is that sometimes you can sense with candidates, they might be saying the right thing, but their tone and their body language suggests something else. And there's something going on that they're not telling you, but you can see in the tone of their voice that they're not as enthusiastic.
And you have a choice then. You can either turn a blind eye or dig deeper, can't you?
So, the not so good recruiters will ignore it, and the best recruiters will act on it and say, look, I've noticed in the last week you've not been returning my calls as much. You don't seem as excited about the opportunity. Look, if something's changed, I understand that you've got to do what's best for you. But can you just tell me what has changed in the last week or so? Where you're at, and you will then generally find they will be open and honest with you.
Okay, we've actually got quite a few people who agree with you, Lee. So Natalie said that she agrees, always use a scale with candidates. It helps open up the conversation. And she's made a really good point here. If you end up putting them in the wrong place, where you overlook those red things and for some reason they do accept and stay there, they won't stay anyway, which is, I think, a really important thing. And then I think a lot of people have agreed with you again, the listening thing. Somebody here, a recruiter was just not listening to what the candidate wanted and was trying to force them forward into that role. And in the end, the candidate had to say no quite bluntly. And that's not unheard of at all. And then we've got Gavin here who agrees, it's about relationships. It's about listening to them. And I 100% agree. So now let's move on to the second point. And this, Lee, when you mentioned it to us, sort of semi-surprised me, which is you're very honest with your candidates about the fact that a counteroffer is probably going to come, aren't you?
All good candidates get counteroffered. So hoping that they won't get one is futile and dumb. So yeah, as I said, from the very first call, you will get a counteroffer. In that situation, what would you do? So we're kind of reinforcing that, telling them to expect it. So we do resignation prep 30 minutes before they hand in their notice. A lot of candidates don't like obviously handing their notice in. It's not a nice thing to do. Tell them that it's absolutely normal to feel nervous, and that once you've done this, you'll feel an awful lot better. But we tell them that they will be getting a counter offer, and then if they don't, they think, oh, I didn't get a counter offer, and they're pissed off, annoyed, sorry.
It makes me even happier that they've accepted. I was never appreciated at that job. I'm leaving. Makes it.
But we tell the candidates to expect it and to say that there's nothing that you can do to change my mind. My mind is made up. It's not about you or not enjoying the business, because if you say that, then they go, well, we'll change the role, we'll change the company, we'll change the hiring manager. It's about the role that I'm going to, and there's nothing that you can do to change my mind. And what you want to get to do is to get the candidate to change the conversation towards the exit in terms of seeing out your notice. We tell them to prepare a handover so that you can change the conversation away from why they're leaving to an exit. And it's, making sure that they stick resolute. It's also letting them know that counteroffers are very flattering. I've had a couple in my career, and even when I was adamant on leaving, I was quite flattered. And it's important that you tell candidates that it is quite flattering, but you need to remind them all the reasons what got them to this stage, and remind them why all the things that have made them unhappy where they're at, and that if you accept a counteroffer, that those things aren't going to change.
I've had offers to leave a company once, but that's probably
it's called being fired, Mike. That's a different phrase. That's a different thing.
If you left, we'll give you some money.
By your own family.
Yes. Kirsty and Peter often do it. Could you go now?
Regular.
That's an interesting thing. I just want to dig into that a little bit, because now I know for a fact, because you're a client, but you train your people in that, don't you? You train your people into that particular interview discussion that you have, that conversation that you have. People are trained to do that properly and really kind of prepare the candidate for the I'm leaving really well. I think we can do something about this kind of situation. This isn't a random, I must remember to ring up so-and-so because they're going to resign today. I mean, that's all scheduled in, isn't it?
We have a pro forma in a process that, actually you need to be doing it all the way throughout an entire process, just dropping these little things. And recruitment is not black and white. It's not easy. You have to have a higher EQ. You need to be listening all the time to little things that may be causes of concern, and you have to act on them immediately.
Yeah.
We've had some more comments on this as well. So Morella really agrees. She says that this is very topical, because especially in the current climate where there are so many jobs and so few candidates, counteroffers are going mental. And also Natalie again agrees. She says that sometimes a counteroffer works just because a candidate is surprised that it's actually going to happen. They didn't think about it. So having that meeting that you say with them at the beginning, going, you will get a counteroffer, don't listen to them, they speak with a forked tongue, don't listen to them, is a really powerful way of sort of taking away that element of surprise and flattery that I suppose increases the chances of it working.
I mean, the only one step up from that is to go with them to the resignation. I'm handling him. You sit down there for a minute. He's out. Yeah. No counter offers. He's off, right? Wouldn't that be great? But just going back to this, I mean, it's kind of like you're doing that in a weird way, isn't it? You're not there physically, but you're there in the back of
You're holding their hand all the way through.
Even though you're not
the
in
journey.
The interview, you kind of are. And that's a really 100%. Important thing that I'd never considered before. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the next thing that we mentioned, because a lot of the time is that maybe a candidate's had a counter offer and they've managed to summon strength to rebuff it, and they're kind of following that process. But in your mind, Lee, your job isn't done yet. Just because they've denied the counter offer and sort of accepted the role, you don't think your job as a recruiter is done then, is it?
Not at all. I mean, so I always make mistakes, and I try and put in processes to stop those mistakes happening again. There's only so much you can do, but I remember one placement where the candidate was on a 3-month notice period, and the client did not stay in touch with them once from when they accepted the role to when they were due to start. And I was calling them, but perhaps I probably could have called them enough. And they are still at risk. So if they're a good candidate, their current employer will be trying to persuade them to stay. And in this market, recruiters are going to still be contacting them every day. You need to check in regularly to make sure that nothing has changed. And, so we find reasons to call candidates, excuses to call them. We send a book, an onboarding book that we send them. Did you get the book? We've just seen that this development in the business. We asked the hiring manager to meet them for lunch. What you want to be doing is to get the candidate to mentally leave their old business and mentally start thinking about joining their new business, by giving them information on their new business so that they mentally leave.
How many, can I just ask, how often do you think you should contact someone? Say someone's on a 3 months notice clause, say. How often do you think over those 3 months you should be touching base with the candidate?
Ideally, a couple of weeks.
Every couple of
You know,
weeks, every fortnight?
yeah, ideally. I think the challenge in recruitment is that we are all so busy, spinning so many plates that you forget sometimes. And before you know it, 2 weeks turns into 4 weeks. A lot could happen in 2 to 4 weeks if you've not spoken to them for 4 weeks.
What I would say on
they
that,
could have been on another interview process and they've accepted, gone.
yeah, which is a danger, isn't it? What I would say, two things about this. One is a lot depends on the client's onboarding process, because increasingly clients are pushing that onboarding process to well before somebody starts. So in other words, as soon as the acceptance takes place, the onboarding process takes place. So I don't think everyone's doing this, but increasingly clients are doing some of the things that you've said. They'll send them a video, or the CEO will ring them, or something. There'll be some series of events that go forward. And then as they get closer, we were talking about this in the breakthrough program the other day, weren't we? As you get closer, well, we set, a little email to say, oh, by the way, we've set up your technical stuff, so your desk's ready. Here's a picture of it, and we got your starter pack, or whatever it is that they do. But you can't rely upon the client doing that, can you? So you kind of have to take the burden for some of that work to make sure that it actually happens.
Yeah, I think it's a two-way process. I think you as the recruiter need to, do some of that, and then you can't set their computer up and order their phone, and first impressions count. So maybe as recruiters, we should be making sure that they've got all of those things in place, because I'm sure we've all had candidates join in the first week and things aren't ready. It just looks awful.
I had a desk in a corridor once for 3 weeks. It was supposed to be for 2 days, for 3 weeks. I think there was something else going on there. That's serious as well. I did have a desk in the corridor. Anyway, one other thing about this as well, just before we press on to the next thing, because I'm conscious of time, is if some CRM systems or applicant tracking systems that you can get do have a workflow feature that very few people use, weirdly, but you can set a workflow up so that when an event happens, like someone accepts a job, the system will remind you and prompt you to do certain things at certain times. So if you have the right computer system in place, you don't have to leave it to your memory or remember to set these reminders up. The machine will just do it for you. So it's probably worth looking to see whether your CRM system does that.
100%.
Yes.
And if you're not tech savvy, just put an Outlook invite in for every 2 weeks.
Yeah. God bless Outlook. So, I mean, before we move on to the sort of final point, Lee, we've had a lot of people who agree with you. Gavin said, if anybody's, whether it's permanent or contractors, it's the same steps that Lee uses, exactly the same approach. Sally agrees again with Lee, keep them interested, maintain the relationship that you built in the beginning of the process after it's done. And Brenna makes a really strong point. Clients at this point, even if the candidate isn't exactly right for them, it's a hassle having to rehire someone after they've left. So clients will work hard. Maybe they'll be like, oh, you didn't accept it before, but we've sweetened the deal so much closer to the time, and people get cold feet. So it's definitely something to be aware of. Now, Lee, I have a question for you. Especially in a climate like we're in now, when there's a lot of jobs and not that many people to fill it, sometimes you find a candidate who, like as Mike said, have all the technical skills and they would be a cultural match. And you've done all that work that you said, you found the sort of truth of it, you've used the rating scale, and perhaps you've got an inkling that maybe they aren't as 100% excited about it, but they're the only person that you could possibly put forward for this very difficult to fill role. Sort of what would you do in that situation?
So I'd tell the client that this is the best available candidate that there is, and there is a risk that they may accept a counteroffer or that they have other interviews, and this one, your role is not number one, it's number two. And so you're trying to constantly understand is, so they're in other interview processes. At what stage are they at? What do you like about the other company? What's it got over this one? Trying to make your opportunity number one. What are the things that can change to make it number one? But you have to be open and honest with clients, because no one likes surprises, and they will really, your credibility will go up versus the rest of the other recruiters in the market. And what you need to be doing alongside that is to try and find other candidates that, you know, the role is number one and they would accept.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay. Right. So in a second, we're going to come to the top tip. Are we not?
Yeah, we do. I do have some comments before we get into
I've
that.
gone out
Oh,
of
go on then.
I do have some comments. So Matthew says that he recruits in the Czech Republic and it's a minimum 2 months contract there. So he kind of contacts the candidate every 2 weeks and varies the method, like Lee said. But I do have a question from Gemma here, which is that she'll be starting a recruitment role for the first time in a couple of weeks. So Lee, what would you say are the timescales for contact at various points so that you wouldn't, you know, be seen as overly aggressive with the candidate or an irritation, or where's that sweet spot sit for you, do you think?
Because it depends on where you're at in the interview process. So, you know, if it's still in the interview process, you are calling them probably every day to giving them interview prep, debriefing, giving them tips, arranging interviews, and then, you know, the offer part, it could be every hour because you're negotiating for the candidate and client. And then when it's post-offer acceptance, it's, you know, have they got the contract? Is there anything in there that they're not happy with? You know, again, don't hope that it's all going to be fine. And then it's, you know, depending on their notice period, if it's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 months, you know, if it's 2 weeks, then it might be every 3 or 4 days, you know, and you're finding reasons. You know, have you got what you need from the organization? Have you been in touch with the hiring manager? Just finding reasons to stay in touch. But yeah, if it's 3 months, probably every couple of weeks. If it's a month, probably every week, and you're finding reasons. Like, you know, as I said, we send an onboarding book to help them in their first 90 days. Send them the book. That's a reason to call. Did you get the book?
Yeah. Okay.
Just quickly on that, and I know we do have to press on, but I remember now when I signed up for my very first contract. I'd been in IT and signed up to become a contractor. My agent drove out in the evening. He was working in Coventry and I lived in Cannock, which is 40 miles away. He drove one evening up, spent the evening with us just to go through the contract line by line. So I understood what was in the contract. If I've got any questions, my wife was there as well. And at the end of it, I just signed on the dotted line. That wasn't his intention. He didn't ask me to. I said, I'll just sign it then. Now, I'm sure people wouldn't do that now, but I think
Different time.
a sort of approximation to that. It's not just there you are, then get it all done. There is an interest, isn't there? Okay, let's talk through the terms. If you want me to, I can go through them with you. Just see if there's anything you're not uncomfortable with. You know, it is really about leveraging what you know against what they need just to get it across the line, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Fantastic. So, as Mike mentioned, Lee, in a second, we're going to be coming to you for the top tip. So, somebody who's having a real problem with counter offers, whether that's just at the moment with the current market or in general, you're going to give a top tip. But first, next week on the show, we have Amy Davis, who I believe is talking to us about those people across the pond.
Yes, how to do business in America. The thing with doing business in America is the fees are enormous in comparison to the UK. And I hope there's no Americans listening into this, but it's a true fact. The American recruitment market, weirdly, is nowhere near as sophisticated as the UK market. So I wouldn't say in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And I'm certainly not suggesting you're one-eyed or male for that matter. But, you know, British recruiters are considered to be better than the equivalent in the United States. So it's a fertile ground. So she's going to come on the show and talk about all things about doing business in America. So join us for that.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Lee, it is your time to shine with your final top tip. So somebody's watching this, what would you say is something that they need to do in order to create this?
They need to come and join Harrison Bridge because we will train them in how to stop counter offers happening.
No, didn't we? Can we cut that out, Kirsty?
Harrison Bridge is hiring. Hashtag Harrison Bridge.
I don't
We did so well.
Is that what you were expecting? I've given you loads of tips.
That's an obvious tip. That's a no-brainer. That
any more.
But if there was a second tip.
so unexpected.
If there was another tip.
Things go wrong in recruitment all the time. There's so many variables. You've got to remember that humans are complex beings, and when something goes wrong, put in a process that means that it doesn't happen again, or it's less likely to happen again.
Oh, yeah, I mean, the thing I love most about this tip,
and join Harrison Bridge. Because we've already done that for you, so you don't need to do it. You don't need to do it. Save you some time.
The thing I love most about this tip that's right here, sorry, that way, still can't get used to the mirroring, is we talk about scalability a lot on this show. So somebody like you who's naturally and had experience about doing this would just naturally do this. But by building a checklist, you sort of help your business to stay scalable, because it means that lower down, people who are dealing with your employees still get the same level of service that they would get dealing with you.
They're not,
The problem,
they're not
most recruitment managers aren't very good at recruitment. No, that's most of the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
They can't train their recruitment consultants. Whereas I've done it for 20 years, Mike. So if you're watching this show and you're a recruitment consultant, you don't think your manager's very good, come join us, because you'll get that training.
What we're going to do is Kirsty's going to edit it when you say that, and there's going to be like bird sounds.
Is
that wow, wow, like a Charlie Brown when the grown-ups speak? Wow, 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 wow. It's going to be like that. Okay, fantastic.
Well,
right,
it's been fabulous. We've had a fantastic show. Not this one; it was 3 weeks ago with some of the people. But no, this has been a great show. Thanks very much for coming on the show, Lee. It's been brilliant. Great tips, and you've been brilliant. So we'll see you all. Thank you again, Lee, and we'll see you all next week.
Well, indeed.
Well, it would be good if I pressed the right button. Can you edit that out?